What's going on, everybody? Khalipa's Tech here, coming back at you with another video. In this video, we're going to be doing a quick comparison between the BLU F92e 5G and the OnePlus Nord N300 5G. Now, as always, if you do end up wanting to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description, where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But with that being said, let's get into it. So with the BLU F92e 5G, we're getting a 6.5-inch IPS LCD display with a 720p resolution, a PPI of 270, and a 20:9 aspect ratio. With the OnePlus Nord N300 5G, we're getting a 6.56-inch 90Hz IPS LCD display with a 720p resolution, a PPI of 269, and a 20:9 aspect ratio as well. So in general, these displays are pretty much the same, yet technically the OnePlus Nord N300 5G is 0.06 inches larger, but you really can't tell the difference too much, and in general, both displays are going to be good for more basic content consumption. So if you're maybe browsing the web, using social media, or watching the occasional video every now and then, you will get a decent experience with either phone. The only real difference here is that with the OnePlus, with a 90Hz refresh rate versus a standard 60Hz refresh rate with the BLU, the movement on the screen is going to be a bit faster and smoother, making the OnePlus feel a bit more premium to use. But aside from that, there's really not a huge difference. So if you are looking for more of an entry-level phone that has a good display, either phone will be perfectly fine. Now for storage, with the BLU F92e 5G, we're getting 128GB of internal storage with microSD card expansion. And with the OnePlus, this phone is getting 64GB with microSD card expansion as well. So on one hand, with the OnePlus, 64GB definitely is not bad, especially considering this is more of an entry-level phone. I want to say in this price range, it's pretty much the standard. And for the average user, as long as you're mindful of what you're putting on your phone and you make sure to offload stuff like photos and videos onto a microSD card with this amount of storage, you're probably going to get by just fine. But on the other hand, with the BLU F92e 5G, with 128GB, it obviously has double the storage of the OnePlus Nord N300 5G. So if storage is more of a priority for you, then I would definitely go with the BLU F92e 5G. But again, with the OnePlus, for the average user, you will at least be okay. So honestly, in this price range, if you're just looking for a phone that has a decent amount of storage, but you don't really need a ton, then either phone is still going to be perfectly fine. Now for security features, both phones have Face Unlock, and they also both have fingerprint scanners right here on the power keys. So definitely a great spot for a fingerprint scanner. Can't go wrong with having it on the power key. But starting with the BLU F92e 5G, let's give them a try. There we go, one more time. And there we go. And now for the OnePlus Nord N300 5G. There we go, one more time. And there we go. So as you can see there, both fingerprint scanners were real fast and responsive. And again, both phones do have Face Unlock too. So if you want to use that instead, you always can. Now taking a look at the camera setups here, with the BLU F92e 5G, we got a typical water drop notch for the front-facing camera. I want to say most phones in this price range are going to have pretty much the exact same design. This camera is 13 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a triple camera setup with a 50 megapixel main camera, a 2 megapixel macro camera, and a 0.3 megapixel depth sensing camera. With the OnePlus Nord N300 5G, we got pretty much the same design for the front-facing camera. This camera is 16 megapixels. Then on the back, we got a dual camera setup with a 48 megapixel main camera and a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera. So in general, as far as features go, both phones do have pretty decent camera setups here, but if you do want a macro camera, then the BLU F92e 5G will have an advantage. Now as far as the normal photo quality goes, both phones are definitely good, and if you're taking pictures for more casual purposes, stuff to send to friends and family, maybe something like Snapchat, or even the occasional Instagram photo or something like that, no matter what you're doing, the cameras on either phone will definitely get the job done. And I feel like for the average user, unless you're really serious about mobile photography and you're expecting really high quality studio level photos, aside from that kind of niche situation, for most people, the cameras on these phones are honestly going to be plenty good enough. To give you an idea of what they can do, here's some pictures taken with the BLU F92e 5G. I definitely do think these pictures came out really nice, especially considering you can get this phone for less than $200. I mean, it really just goes to show if you want to take some nice presentable photos for maybe something like Instagram, for example, you really don't have to spend $1,000 or even $500 on a higher end phone. You can simply get something like the BLU F92e 5G. And for the average user, the photo quality is really going to be good enough. And then here's some pictures taken with the OnePlus Nord N300 5G. Again, same kind of thing. This phone definitely takes some real nice photos. So again, for the average user, if you are looking for more of an entry-level, affordable phone that has a good camera, and you're not too concerned about having a bunch of nice features, but you do want nice photo quality, you're really not going to go wrong with either phone. Now, when it comes to RAM and processor, with the BLU F92e 5G, this phone is getting 4GB of RAM with the MediaTek Dimensity 700 processor. With the OnePlus Nord N300 5G, this phone also has 4GB 4GB of RAM with the MediaTek Dimensity 810. So in general, not really surprisingly, the performance on these phones is actually pretty similar for typical basic activities like web browsing, social media, streaming content like videos and music, and even some light mobile gaming. For that kind of activity, either phone will get the job done just fine. And if you are more of a casual user, maybe you are going to be on your phone a decent amount, but you're not really going to be doing anything super demanding like high performance mobile gaming or video editing, for example, then in that case, I do think either phone will be plenty fast enough. But between the two, in my experience, I have noticed the OnePlus is a little bit faster, not really by much, but if you're going to be on your phone a bit more and you want a slightly nicer, smoother experience, then I do think the OnePlus will have an advantage there. Now, I did run benchmark tests on both phones using Geekbench 5, and here are the results I got. So again, there's not really a huge difference, but at the same time, the OnePlus Nord N300 5G does have a clear advantage. So if you do want the ever so slightly faster phone between the two, then definitely keep this in mind. But again, at the end of the day, if you are looking for more of an entry-level phone for more basic activities, the BLU F92e 5G is still going to be plenty fast enough as well. Now for the batteries, both phones have 5000 mAh batteries, with the BLU F92e 5G supporting 10W fast charging, and the OnePlus Nord N300 5G supporting 33. So when it comes to charging speeds, as you can see, quite a difference here. Clearly the OnePlus Nord N300 5G with, again, 33W fast charging is going to charge quite a bit faster. And not only this, but it also does come with a 33W fast charger, so you don't even need to go buy one to actually take full advantage of the charging speeds. So definitely not something you see every day, and even compared to more expensive phones, the charging speeds with the OnePlus are still quite a bit better. So while the BLU F92e 5G's charging speeds aren't terrible, if you actually do want a phone that really does charge fast, then definitely go with the OnePlus Nord N300 5G. But when it comes to actual battery life, the BLU F92e 5G is really just as good. Again, both phones do have 5000 mAh batteries, so with either of them, you can expect to get great battery life and longevity. So if that is more of a priority for you, then you're really not going to go wrong either way. But again, if you do want the better charging speeds, the OnePlus Nord N300 5G will have a pretty big advantage. Now, as far as software goes, both phones do currently have Android 12, so unfortunately no Android 13, at least not yet. It is possible that eventually they will get updates, but with the BLU F92e 5G, I'm definitely not counting on it. I don't think I've ever seen a BLU phone get a major update before, but with the OnePlus, I'm sure that eventually this phone will have Android 13. Now, don't get me wrong, it's possible that this phone doesn't get an update either, and if it does, I have no idea when it's going to happen, but when it comes to software support, I would definitely trust the OnePlus over the BLU. But that being said, if you really care that much about the software, then you're probably not going to want to get either phone because, again, these phones do have Android 12, and seeing as we are in 2023 and we're on Android 13 at this point, neither phone here has the latest version of Android. But just because I know OnePlus's software support is a bit better, if you do want maybe the potential to upgrade to Android 13 in the future, but you don't really care about having it right now, the OnePlus is going to be a bit better. But even with the BLU F92e 5G, I mean, most phones in this price range have Android 12 too for whatever reason, so even then it's really not that bad. Another thing I do want to point out here is that with the OnePlus Nord N300 5G, we are getting NFC, so you can use tap and pay with this phone. Whereas unfortunately with the BLU F92e 5G, this phone does not have NFC. Now this was definitely disappointing because seeing a new phone in 2023 that doesn't have NFC is definitely a huge drawback, especially for a 5G phone. I mean, aren't these supposed to have the latest and greatest features? And at this point, tap and pay, which of course you do need NFC to use, is such a common, widely used feature. I mean, most stores in 2023, at least in the US, have at least some sort of tap and pay. So even if you don't currently use it, maybe you might want to use it in the future. Regardless, in this day and age, having a phone that doesn't have NFC is definitely at least somewhat of a drawback. So if you do like to use that feature, then the OnePlus is definitely going to be a much better choice. But in conclusion, which of these phones is better? In general, if you're looking for an entry-level 5G phone for more basic activities, either phone is definitely worth considering, but in almost every way where there is a difference, I would personally go with the OnePlus Nord N300 5G. First of all, this phone is a little bit faster. Again, not really by much, but if you're going to be on your phone a bit more doing stuff like web browsing, social media, things like that, you are going to get a slightly nicer, smoother experience. This phone also charges much faster, which in some situations might not really matter, but if you're in a situation where you're not always around a charger, then having that extra charging speed is definitely going to help. And then again, this phone does have NFC too, which in my opinion is definitely a really important feature to have. And honestly, for me at least, not having NFC is sort of a deal breaker. So yeah, because of that, I would definitely go with the OnePlus Nord N300 5G. And plus, even though this phone unfortunately currently has Android 12, I have a feeling that eventually OnePlus will give it an update. Now, I'm not completely sure about that, and if you really want Android 13 right now, you might as well just get a Samsung. But in general, compared to BLU, the software support with OnePlus is at least a bit better. That being said though, when it comes to storage, the BLU F92e 5G does have quite an advantage, having double the storage of the OnePlus Nord N300 5G. So if storage is really important to you, maybe you're someone who's constantly downloading apps, games, stuff like that, then in that case, I could definitely see going with the BLU F92e 5G because At the end of the day, despite the whole thing with the NFC, these phones really are going to do the same things. So unless you really care about NFC, you're really not going to go wrong with either of them. But this concludes my comparison between the BLU F92e 5G and the OnePlus Nord N300 5G. Again, if you want to learn more about either phone individually, definitely check out the description where I am linking to several other videos about them, as well as some information about pricing, availability, and some of my favorite smartphone accessories. But that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it and found it useful, be sure to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to follow Kalip's Tech on Twitter and Instagram. And as always, I will see you in the next video.